Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Andrew Whitman in for Richard French tonight. We begin with the cleanup from Hurricane Irma. Millions of people still without power. Many areas still inundated with water and thousands of rescue and utility workers. Hundreds of them from our region are in Florida right now trying to help people and working to get the lights back on. We have a live report for you tonight. For that, we turn to Marcy Gonzalez. She joins us live tonight from Tampa, Florida. Good evening, Marcy.
Hi, evacuees are now making it back to their homes and businesses and finding messes like this. You can see this deck was just ripped away from the side of this building. And of course, this is just a small part of the damage. The start to this literal long road to recovery in the Florida Keys, covered in sand and seaweed, lined with shipwrecked boats. The first evacuees now returning, many to find the kind of utter destruction they feared. Neighborhoods flattened, businesses badly damaged, no cell phone service, electricity, or running water.
I mean, it's like everybody just tipped everything over. You're just praying that everybody's alive.
The Caribbean coping with worse after Hurricane Irma. New images from St. Martin capturing just a glimpse of the catastrophe.
Almost everything is broken down. For our need, we need water and food. It's not now, maybe it's for sure. Water and food, we don't have that.
Some Americans rescued from the islands now stranded in Florida. Airports here finally starting to function, flights selling out fast.
Everything we looked, though, once we tried to book it, it would be gone.
While much of the Sunshine State starts to recover,
It's a terrible mess.
now record flooding hitting Jacksonville. Storm surge inundating communities.
We were offered a boat ride from a neighbor.
More than 100 people rescued from fast rising water overnight.
I've been here 47 years, and I've never seen the water this high. Never.
Even in parts of Florida without flooding and damage, there are long lines for gas, and more than 5 million people here are still without power. Live in Naples, Florida, Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News. Now back to you.
All right, Marcy, thank you very much. The strength and size of both Irma and Harvey before it, reigniting the debate over climate change. Many scientists say that warming ocean temperatures, one key factor that's impacting the severity of these storms. But when EPA head Scott Pruitt was asked whether climate change could be playing a part, he flat out dismissed the notion, wouldn't even talk about it. But Miami Mayor Tomas Regalado couldn't disagree more. He told the Herald, quote, "This is the time to talk about climate change. This is the time that the president and the EPA and whoever makes decisions needs to talk about climate change. If this isn't climate change," he wrote, "I don't know what is. This is a poster child for what is to come." And joining me now is Assistant Professor Jase Bernhardt. He works at Hofstra University's Department of Geology, Environment, and Sustainability. So, Professor Bernhardt, it's been a busy couple of weeks. We had Harvey with record rainfall and likely record damage, Irma with near record wind speed and damaging almost all of Florida into the southeast U.S., not to mention Jose and Katia. How much of all this can be attributed to climate change, and what aspects? The number of storms, their size, their severity?
It's a really tough question, Andrew, and there's a few things here that are important to unpack. First of all, sea surface temperature, and specifically warm ocean temperatures, is the key factor in allowing hurricanes to form and then strengthen. And we do see a general slight rise in sea surface temperature, especially as we head towards the end of this century. But that's not the only factor that allows hurricanes to form. You also need other favorable conditions, and many of those we're not sure how climate change may influence those. Overall, we've seen a very slight increase in storm activity in the Atlantic Ocean, at least, but not necessarily statistically significant. So it's sometimes tough to say if climate change influences the specific storm and the overall trends.
Is this, to your mind, the new normal for us, or is it just the beginning? Should we be expecting more and more storms with more damage unless we see any significant improvements in our climate?
Well, certainly more damage. Over the years, we've continued to rapidly develop coastal regions vulnerable to storm surge and wind and flooding and all the impacts from tropical systems which make landfall. So certainly, we're going to continue to see those damage totals go up because we continue to, again, develop these areas that will get damaged by the storms each time they make landfall. And we had kind of had a lull. We went 12 years just about without a major hurricane hit the U.S. from 2005 Wilma to 2017 Harvey and now Irma. So we had a very active period then, and now unfortunately we seem to be in an active period now. Hurricane frequency often goes in cycles, and if we go back into a cycle with more storms, it's possible we'll start to see more in the way of U.S. landfalls over the coming years for sure.
When it comes to overall views of climate change, there is one political party, and I won't name it and spare you from the politics, but it seems to have shifted from the science is still out on climate change to, well, we don't know how much, if any, of this comes from the human's role in climate change. How definitive is the science on mankind's role in climate change?
Certainly, there's no question that humans are playing a very important role in influencing the climate, specifically through the emissions of greenhouse gases, particularly CO2 or carbon dioxide. Indeed, humans are the main cause behind this unprecedented rate of warming that we've seen. However, it's a bit trickier when it comes to extreme events like hurricanes. Naturally, since they are extreme events, they don't occur as frequently, so it's more difficult to establish trends in them and then to go forward in time and project how they might change over time. So some model simulations actually show that storm frequency might decrease, but the storms that do form are going to be stronger because sea surface temperatures are warming, much like the rest of the globe. So it's a complicated situation. Humans are certainly influencing the climate, and there are some footprints of humans on hurricanes, tropical cyclones as well. It's a little harder to tell right now given the complicated nature of this.
So, Professor, where should we go from here? Should we just abandon our coastlines and our low-lying areas, or are there ways to manage and mitigate the damage that we expect to see in the future?
Well, it's certainly difficult. With Harvey, of course, the unprecedented flooding that occurred was worsened by the fact that we've developed so rapidly around Houston, an economic boom, lots of sprawl. And of course, sprawl entails artificial surfaces, buildings, and especially pavement. And pavement, if you bring that over soil and wetlands, which are natural absorbers or sponges to help ameliorate flooding, if you get rid of those, then flooding will get worse, even the same amount of rain. So the same amount of rain 20, 30 years ago, the flooding wouldn't have been quite as bad. So if we continue to develop unchecked, then flooding will get worse. So certainly being smart with our development, if there's vacant lots and areas that can be turned back into natural surfaces, that really helps. And also finding ways to strengthen building codes. Building codes were made stronger after Hurricane Andrew 25 years ago in Florida, and hopefully storms like this will remind folks on the coastline to build, if they do have to build there, to build stronger buildings and also try to elevate when possible. So even things like houses on stilts that we're starting to see here on Long Island, for example, since Sandy hit.
So let me expand on that a little bit. If I gave you unlimited resources and unlimited power to make whatever changes you thought would be important to mitigate the effects of climate change, what would be the first things that you would focus on?
Well, fossil fuel emissions, obviously a key factor. So really trying to ramp up our transition to renewable energy. About 10% of our energy now comes from renewable sources here in the U.S. It'd be great to see that continue to increase. And to limit that emission. That's really the number one cause, enhancing the greenhouse effect, which changes the climate, mainly through direct global warming. And then that direct global warming has other influences on things like hurricanes, potentially, and other extreme weather events. Still researching exactly how we're influencing those. So certainly number one thing is emissions, but also smart development. You have things like the urban heat island effect. So cities essentially trapping more heat, making them warmer, which can lead to issues as well, for example, enhancing heat waves.
Let me end with the doomsday question. You know, these storms aren't exactly the worst case scenario, just where we are right now. In your mind, what's the nightmare outcome and how far off might that be if we don't take steps to arrest it?
Well, with Irma, we certainly almost saw a nightmare outcome. As you probably recall, there are model runs showing that Irma could be a Category 4 or 5 hurricane plowing directly into southeast Florida, Miami, Fort Lauderdale area, one of the most densely populated areas on the planet. So certainly that could have been a close to doomsday scenario. And as we can continue to have development along the coast, again, every year we're playing with this possibility of millions of people being hit directly by a very powerful storm. So it's really just a matter of time. At some point, our luck will run out, and a place like Miami or New Orleans or Houston will get directly hit with the very strong winds from a powerful Category 4 or Category 5 hurricane. So it's really not a matter of if, but when.
Jase Bernhardt, Assistant Professor at Hofstra University's Department of Geology, Environment, and Sustainability. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Up next, it is primary day across New York. We're going to tell you about the races that we are watching, and our panel will join us to dissect and discuss. Stay with us.